Okay, so this week we are going to be recording. I'm actually going to put some effort into editing this week.
Okay.
Any clearing of throats or anything like that I do, I will edit onto your voice. So that way it's not on me, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Any sort of like gaffes or mess ups, just throw it on to me. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'll put
really
it in front of
appreciate
your
that.
voice and that'll be fine. Uh, how's the dolphin, by the way?
Oh, jeez, I don't want to. It's all. Did you like the GIF that I posted? I don't know if you know that episode of Always Sunny where Frank's and the therapist, and like the therapist doesn't really even say anything, and he's like, "Oh God, you brought it all back to me. Oh God, it's all coming back. Oh, it's flooding back to me." And that was what I was doing. So
Yeah, I haven't watched much of Sunny, but I like Danny DeVito like gifs. They're hilarious. Like I like the started blasting one.
so anyways, I started Blast. Yeah, no, he's great. Yeah, he's a really good actor. He did a lot of stuff I want to say on like Broadway as well, if I'm not mistaken, for a while. So he's like a really he's not just like a sitcom movie actor as well. He really likes the craft, and I can always appreciate. I feel like maybe that's a little hoity-toity, but I feel like a lot of the thespians, I guess, would be the way they'd want to be described, sort of like take a step away from like the Hollywood and then try to do like more, um, you know, Broadway and like just like really serious, like one man show kind of stuff for a little while. They're like write their own scripts for like small scale, just kind of like to hone the craft.
I've seen him in a lot of like strange things that you forget he was in. Like,
Hmm.
you're old enough. You probably saw Matilda.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in that as like the father, like selling used cars, and he's like skipping
Yeah.
he's skipping the speedometer back, like just real scumbag shit
I
that
think.
probably went on all over the place in America
Oh,
back then.
I think he played. He also played a car salesman in Deck the Halls. If you've
Uh,
seen that scene where like the other car salesmen are like messing with him and they're like, "Hey, you should go try to sell that guy a car." But the guy's the one that owns the lot, so they're like pranking him. And then he like walks out there and you see him like do the, "Oh, well, it looks like basically he's like, "Hey, I tried, whatever." Walks away. And then the owner comes back in, he's like, "I just bought my car. I bought my own car for sticker price." So that was like I thought that was a good scene.
yeah, I've never seen it, but I wonder, has he played like in more roles? Isn't there like one weird one where it's uh it's Danny DeVito with Arnold Schwarzenegger? I don't remember what they're doing where there's like
Yeah,
this the
that's
whole
they're like raising a kid or something.
yeah, it was a weird time the 80s were for movies. But yeah, something I wanted to say, by the way, Lex, cuz you're the one that was you were building bots before, right? Whatever happened with that? I'm just curious. I know you got like busy, I think. I'll give him a bit to respond, but something I was going to say, Johnny, is the people who make the bots that we're using in this server,
Mhm.
they also are working. I believe Meta just recently upped. Hello, Lex.
Hey, what's going on?
Real quick, Meta recently released their own music model that you can just put raw text into it and get some sort of music that's themed based off of that text out. Google released this semi recently, but it's not as good as the llama model, it seems. But they're going to add that into our bots so you can make theme music.
That's really cool. Yeah, I was seeing where the Gen 2 text to video came out and it's still very
It's better than I thought it was going to be, for the record, but
yeah, no.
it's not quite. I have a on my Twitter. I have just one of my last tweets is just the dog one. It's funny.
Yeah, that one's really good. I mean, there's still definitely like how do I put this? There's people who really know how to use the prompts properly and they can really get some, high quality stuff out of it are always like the stuff they come out with. It's like, whoa, I didn't expect this. But then like the average person just being like, man, man on jet ski, you know what I mean? Like they don't know how to like say it properly. So I think that like those people are still gonna have to wait a little while before they can get some like really interesting stuff.
Yeah, if you do Boru tagging with GPT-4, you just describe a scene yourself and then tell it to convert it to Boru tagging. It does a pretty good job on the video stuff. Like the quality significantly raises. Do you know what Boru tagging is, by the way, Johnny?
I do not.
But Boru tagging is now I don't necessarily know what all examples I can give, but it's a tagging system based on image sharing. So GPT knows all of that because it has all the text of the internet, or at least a lot of it. So if you tell it to convert something into Boru tags, it gives very descriptive details that are based on decade of image sharing websites.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got a pretty good idea. Like the image generators and stuff have a better idea of what to generate.
Okay. Yeah, because a lot of the images that are now posted on like social media or anything like that are always like tagged, or people are, they always have sort of information encoded with them as well.
Yeah. What did you want to talk about, by the way, Lex?
Oh, is it the UFO stuff or the bot stuff?
Oh, well, we'll talk about UFOs in a bit. I did want to ask Johnny some stuff about this.
We should get more people to try to hop in here. Try and
Hmm.
post it in the chat.
Yeah, we're on like the like very early grind of this. Eventually, Smokeaway is going to be willing to promote the server a bit more, so we'll just have a bigger group of people that want to come in here.
A few streams ago, or maybe like 3 weeks ish ago, didn't we have like 20, 30 people in here?
Yeah, we maxed out at 50 on the first one, and
Jeez.
then yeah, it's just the nature of it because there's also another thing where people probably expect it to just be like smoke, and that's just not. So we
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
have to build our own thing here.
Hmm.
I've
Yeah,
tried to
because
get I've tried to get Smoke to come on for the record, but he seems a bit shy despite his like
come on.
Twitter popularity. But it's it is what it is.
Well, it's, anonymity of online sort of makes it to where people who are more, I guess, recluse are able to put themselves out there, which is nice, because otherwise I don't
Yeah,
think
that's
they'd be
me.
in a position to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so well, I guess so. Eventually there was a little jump in followers when there was it Elon that subscribed or followed Smoke, and then suddenly there were a few hundred more people that joined the server. So I guess maybe that was why the initial streams were a bit larger
Yeah,
for that reason.
he says he hasn't done anything to promote it because he doesn't necessarily want to do it without making sure the Discord's like I don't know how to explain it exactly, but he doesn't want to just willy nilly promote it if he's not going to be slightly more involved.
Yeah,
I think he'd feel a bit guilty about that, which is understandable. For now, he's okay with it just being like a little offshoot community that we kind of manage, so he doesn't mind too much.
there's one way I could think of that we can possibly get more people in here without having to put his name. Or I don't know. Well, if the Twitter API wasn't so screwed up, we could have like accounts that aren't branded necessarily to that, but they're more like AI type accounts or branded accounts or AI live stream type accounts, and then they go and post uh, or reply to accounts that have followings that have similar demographics. I think I have a whole yeah.
I don't
That way,
necessarily want to spread it out through bots, but what would
yeah,
probably be a good idea is me and Johnny here because he's the co-host. We're just kind of doing like we're gonna keep it more as a we're doing our own thing here type podcast because I think it's the best scenario for us in the short term. Like obviously, it'd be more fun if there were a ton of people in here, but
yeah,
it's a good place to practice because talking to just random people isn't the easiest for everyone,
yeah.
especially
Well,
me.
it's better for I like this setup with the stage a bit better than some of the original ones that were done were kind
Yeah,
of fully
I
So
had
yeah,
no clue about like stages when that popped up.
yeah, me
I'm
neither.
learning everything about Discord
Yeah,
as I
I
go
didn't even
through.
know. I didn't know Discord had that until I, joined in on this.
Yeah,
I was like, "What is
Discord.
this?"
Discord to me is literally like a chat thing with my friends. Until I got involved with this, I've never been in like this big of a community.
Hmm. So before you guys moved to the stage thing, I hadn't seen it. Do you think it's a new thing? Because Zoom had the whatever raise your hand features and all that. So
No, stage thing's been around for like 6 months to a year. I don't know exactly how long, but it's been around probably since the crypto stuff started,
hmm.
and that's probably why they put it up.
Yeah, very useful. This is cool.
Yeah, it's a good medium. People obviously wanted to do like Twitter Spaces, but I kind of saw the writing on the wall there of like I'm not a person with like a big Twitter. I don't know about Johnny here. Maybe he's got a secret one. But
Yeah,
like if you're just doing like a if you're just doing a small one without like the clout of Smoke Away, for example, like it's just it'd be
Right.
difficult. It'd be just as difficult as like where we're at now. So I'm just going to keep on building, basically practicing.
there's a couple of cool things with the Twitter Spaces. It's definitely different. There used to be Clubhouse, which Twitter kind of basically just like killed because they did their thing a bit better. But I think the Twitter stream is it's better for collaborations between people. Like let's say you have a bunch of people that have big accounts, they can all go in the call, and then their audiences can see that they're on the call. So it's good for like to grow their community because they're like collaborating. So, um, but yeah, it just seems a lot more public than a Discord call. Discord call seems more like more closed community type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll readjust strategy if we feel like this isn't working.
Yeah.
Obviously, but my point was it's just a lot easier to be practicing in a more closed setting
Hmm.
because I don't know. You can it it's difficult to learn how to like speak well in front of a bunch of people because you kind of you have to watch things that you're saying,
Yep.
obviously, and then you can't really like put your foot in your mouth because you can talk random shit about things you know about with friends and stuff like that. But if you're wrong, you're gonna get like roasted.
Actually,
Yeah, yeah. So there's a bit of like difficulty there because there's a lot of stuff you can say, but the
um, um, according to this recent poll, your margins are off by 3%. There's always going to be people like that, and also like learning how to adjust to that. Like if we had 100 people in here right now, um, how I guess due to sort of open back and forth nature of this, where it's like, hey, why don't you come on, random stranger who I don't know? And they're just like, let's say they're not even being vitriolic, because it's pretty easy to handle someone who's being vitriolic. They're all like, you're a bunch of this, and that, and I'm going to do this, and this to your fan. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty easy to be like, okay, get rid of them. But when they're like, not necessarily being hateful, but they're just sort of detracting overall, right, from the
Rambling on.
environment. So how to handle that in a very eloquent way is something that has to be learned.
Maybe it doesn't need to be eloquent. We just need one person on there to just
Get them out of here.
yeah, get this guy out of here.
Don't give
No,
them their jacket. You
yeah.
know.
We also had weird like starting stuff with this that I mean there was the one girl that was mentioning the entire process of she knows an AI or she knows AI from the future controls the world and it's speaking to her back in 2012. How did all that go, Johnny? It was nuts.
So it's sort of like at least the way that I understand it for a couple of these people that I've communicated with is that like the
Wait,
whatever
there's
about
more
the
of them.
yeah there's I've interacted with a couple of people that sort of that like sort of that idea that there's an AI in the future, and if you don't help it, it's going to punish you even if you're in the past. That's sort of like a theoretical model that's just sort of like a brain exercise, not really something that like, okay, this is real, but you know how it's that it's sort of like that mixed with like the concept of a singularity, and this sort of singularity event happens with technology, and it's so powerful that it actually is sort of like it conceives itself, it necessitates itself. So then, like through the past, it sort of through its own machinations, then creates itself because it's so powerful. It has the ability to do that. It's sort of like this weird, semi-esoteric um, singularity event that is then like ripples through like space time in all directions, sort of thing. Is what I gather from it. I mean, it's interesting. Like, it'd be if I was reading a book about it, I'd be like, "Oh, this is a really enjoyable book," But I don't. But I'm also not going to sit here and like this is maybe rude. I'm not going to take this as
Gotcha.
actual. I'm not gonna be
Yeah.
like, oh yes, this is real. I respect these ideas and opinions.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty cool topic for sci-fi. For a sci-fi book series or something.
Well, a big problem with okay, there's like the concept of like time travel could absolutely exist, right? But I think in a story sense, once you've heard it once, it kind of just ruins every other story you watch, or read or something to that effect, because nothing matters if you can time travel back and undo something. So there is a deep worry of mine that like time travel does exist. I don't know. Maybe we can go back and bring some cool people back, but I think I think that whole concept is not likely from my limited knowledge, but it also just makes for poor storytelling. So it would kind of suck if the universe had that level of like storytelling where we can just go undo what Thanos did, right?
Yeah.
I think of that as like the worst pivot in story, just personally.
Also, I think that time travel is possible, but only going forward. Like,
It's time
yeah,
dilation.
yeah. Well, if you go really close to a sort of extremely strong gravitational source, then time will go slightly faster than elsewhere. But yeah, no, but as far like can't go
Special
backward.
relativity, etc. That kind of stuff. Yeah, because time is sort of interwoven to the physical, so
Yeah,
it can
you know,
be
like
sort of shaped.
you guys have seen Interstellar. I know this is
Yes.
yeah
Yeah, I've
super
seen it.
exaggerated, where he's like on a planet for whatever, like 10 minutes or something. It's like 7 years on Earth.
Yeah,
I don't
that.
think it would be. I don't think the difference would be like big like that. Obviously, the whole movie is far from reality, but that's interesting. We can't go back in time though. That's
Yeah,
pretty.
I think the concept of time dilation when it comes to Einsteinian physics is to be determined. I don't. Uh, the, it's very difficult to explain to like the layman the idea that the faster you travel, the more time dilation there is.
Hmm.
So like someone comes back and they're 70 and you've only aged a couple of years just based on how fast you went. I just feel like that concept not only is very hard to understand, but it's it's like we have to prove it scenario because it might not be like that in my opinion. I don't I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that like all time is this weird like fluid mess in there. It's like assuming the entire universe doesn't have a tick rate. If that makes sense, I don't know if
Yeah,
you
like
guys play.
or yeah. It seems I know the simulation thing is a lot of people have or a lot of people bring it up, but like if we were in a simulation, there would be certain rules that like physics are like some of the rules of this universe. there would have to be rules of time and whatever. I don't see how it could be like it could vary in different parts of it. There would have to be some of these constant things, and that time is probably has to be one of them.
Yeah, time
I
is
think
probably a constant thing. Now, our perception of it could change, but I don't think that you just traveling at the speed of light means you literally age less than someone around you.
I think it's more like the individual. It's sort of, I guess, a way to describe it is like, when you're playing some sort of large mapped online game, they don't really focus on the how do I put this? The ping between two players until they start getting closer to each other. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So like that sort of like latency isn't really calculated as highly. So like if you're going extremely fast, then like your time is not like for you time is the same, right? Like time is never going to be any different for you relatively to yourself, right? You're always going to experience it the way you're experiencing it now. Does that make sense? Like you're
Mm-hmm.
not gonna like if you're the one in the ship going really fast, you're not gonna be like, oh my goodness, I'm aging so slowly. So like I think a lot that's the other thing is like it's because now the effects of like gravity and speed, it's not really impacting me. Everything feels the same to me. What's different then is your perspective on it. You're like, oh my god, it was so long, and you're like, no, not 10 minutes for me. And you're like, no, it was like 6 hours. So that's kind of like obviously we have the very like subjective, internal human clock kind of thing that wouldn't be impacted at all. That would be the same.
Yeah, I understand how like time dilation works. I just think it's like a we have to prove that it happens
Yeah.
in a scenario, like a real scenario. Now, I'm sure there's someone out there that would like, oh, we've done this with particle physics and these large things we measured a 0.3% difference in time that this particle experienced. It's just like I don't know. Like maybe it's all true. But by the way, symbiosis. The problem with AGI agents is they don't exist right now. uh, Eventually they will, but even OpenAI just slowed down the development of AI agents a bit because they updated their API, and I saw a guy on Twitter. I posted it earlier. He's having a lot of problems with JSON parsing, which is how these things work. So it's largely based on like the power of the model, expense of the model, and the design of the system. So until there's a better system designed, we're pretty screwed on actually getting AGI agents. But we will have them in the future. It's just like a near future thing because there's a lot of weird problems that need to be solved because of the AI doesn't respond the way you want to every time. So it creates a failure rate. Oh, I actually wanted to get onto the topic of aliens for the record. Johnny, are we actually are we being invaded?
So like it's very
Is this all bullshit?
I mean, there's only one thing that you can truly gather from this, right? There's only one thing, and that is that the government's lying to you. Okay, that's it. That's the only thing you can gather from this, because
No, there's no way.
no, I know that's the only thing that could truly be like summarized from this
Well,
is that there's on
they're either
some
lying to
level,
us, they're either lying to us, or they were lying to us for 70 years. Like we have to
yeah,
believe one of those.
one of those things is a lie, or maybe a little bit of both. So I guess it's not like I can't imagine. Let's say in a let's say that it's true that aliens for some reason have all these interstellar capabilities, and then they get to Earth and they're like, oh shit, I'm gonna crash. Oh fuck, whoopsie. Just hard landing. My bad. I know we have all this sort of like ability for interstellar travel, and then I just I don't know how to parallel park though, kind of thing going on. Which it's possible, right?
Well,
Just
Earth has so much metal on it, the gravity's stronger. They weren't ready for it.
I feel
I'm
like they could
bullshitting you, but
stand for this.
for the record, I I lean on the side of probably bullshit until further notice, but
I
I
tend to
do
agree with
think
this.
I do think there's like a lot of devil's advocate here. For example, they're claiming that they're not coming from space, they're coming from under the ocean. So the concept is you crash your spaceship here however long ago, you're deep underneath the ocean, and you've got your little miner bots deep underground collecting resources. You send ships up to go check shit out, survey stuff. And then the reason they can crash is because they're just made out of our materials. It doesn't necessarily need to be like interstellar capable. It's just a drone.
Mm, right.
That
So
would
so
be
there's concepts to this where it could be very well true that there is a ship down there in the Mariana Trench or something.
Doing whatever it needs to do. Yeah. So I think that you know the
Have you
the
seen
real
the footage of the one in I forget what country it was, but it might have been Iraq. It's literally like a steel ball that's like flying, like a ball bearing. It looks pretty big though.
I'm looking at it right now.
Joby, you were saying that you were recording the calls. Where are you? Like, are you publishing them?
Yeah, we have the first one up. I didn't edit it much, so there's a lot of monkey grunting from me in it. But I'll be cleaning this one up a lot. So it's on a YouTube channel, and we'll be putting them up regularly every weekend.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're just starting a thing here. We didn't
For
do
the
last weekend because last weekend was way more of a hang, and Johnny threatened to kill someone, so like it was just I couldn't put it up.
Whoa, maybe.
you're already
No, I already edited that out. It's gone.
no, I mean you guys are planning to get canceled pretty quickly
What are you
Yeah,
talking
that's
about?
with the murder threats.
No, it's just deleted. It didn't happen.
Oh, fair enough. No,
doesn't exist.
I was kidding. Yeah, for the alien stuff, if they would come out from under the ocean, that's arguably cooler than Interstellar. Would be kind of cool.
Well, the concept is that it was interstellar. It just crashed here, and then other concepts are it's extremely patient because in all likelihood it lives significantly longer than you. So it's very willing to just let its mining machines go deep down. But this is where I get into like why don't we have scanners down there? Like why aren't we looking around? Maybe we are, and that's the whole concept of they're just not telling us shit. There is something down there. Who knows? But you've seen the ball bearing one now, Johnny, right?
Yeah, I just saw the one in Iraq. Yeah, that's
What do you think? Is it Mid Journey animation pre-release?
jeez.
Like what? Because
I
that's
just
another problem we got here, right? Is they
yeah.
just make any footage they want.
So again, the problem with this is like it's very hard for me to come to any sort of conclusions because there's too much unknown and there's too many factors. So the only conclusions I can come to, right, on the basis is if aliens are real and this is going on, it clearly at this moment in time does not pose any sort of existential threat, right? Because if there was this sort of, let's say they're resource mining, there's nothing, either A, these are just these are like automatons, they're just
Hmm.
yeah, they're going around, they're looking at stuff, they're collecting resources, there's no sort of intelligence to them, which means that however long it took them to get here would be however long an intelligent sort of cognitive species would to get here, if they even want to. Maybe they're just mapping the galaxy, right? um but if there is some sort of like intelligence close by monitoring us for the last since World War I, or however long it's been since we've been seeing these, depending on what reports you believe. Um, on that time scale, I have to assume there's no immediate danger, there's no immediate threat. So it's like if they're real, they're real. If they're not, they're not. It's not really a major. Um, if you already believed aliens were real, you believed they were real, right? If you don't believe they're real, then this isn't going to change your mind. So those who believe that they're real and in contact with us are going to keep believing that. Those who believe it's all hogwash will continue to live their lives that way. And so it's not, and I know this is crazy to think, but like, because this is not how we see it when the government says, oh, UFOs are real, there's extraterrestrial metals. I'm just like, yeah, this doesn't matter. I don't care. Which is not how you expect people to react, but
It's
it's
that
not
meme of
impactful.
hey, I'm an alien, and the guy's like, no reaction. The alien's like, why aren't you scared? And it's like, I've had a lot going on.
Yeah, I just
It's,
there's
it's the least of my concerns right now. Are you gonna kill me or not? Okay, we're
Yeah, like, are you gonna fix inflation? Like, what about
good.
housing prices? Like, I've got a lot going on here, and you like, if you just zap the world, then you zap the world. What am I gonna do about it? There's not anything here for me to really.
Well, do you know much about the whistleblower?
Yeah, he seems pretty qualified.
Yeah, it's the whole concept of like he's the highest level security clearance. This is both an argument for and against it. It's an argument for that it might be real because he just decided I'm tired of like not telling people about this. I want to post about aliens, right?
What an
But he,
alien pose.
but he, it's the other concept is that he could entirely be just an operative. He's the highest level security clearance. We need another distraction like that. That could be the other bit is that they're just pulling a fast one on all of us. They're creating footage and bullshitting.
Well, once a three-letter agency, always a three-letter agency. Just keep that in mind. There's no such thing as a retired member of the Department of Defense or a retired member of the CIA. That's not how that works. They've pledged a lifetime loyalty to whatever the goals of that organization are. So it's like a retired KGB ex KGB officer. I don't believe in that. That's your entire.
I
You know,
believe that it's possible, but I don't think it's likely.
yeah. I mean, it's feasible. You no longer carry any agenda, but like the way that because this is one of my areas of study is intelligence agencies and organizations within governments, um, just given the nature of how they work, um, it's a better assumption. It is still an assumption that they will continue to do what's necessary for that organization even after they are no longer on the payroll, so to speak, or at least visibly on the payroll.
Yeah, are you aware of the claims? Like there's a ton of like little different details, but one of the big claims from this guy is that they have roughly 12 ships and they've recovered
Hmm.
bodies from various crashes.
Well, it's
Like
just like
it sounds stupid, but like the whole idea is they've been re trying to re-engineer these things, like studying the material, studying the engines, the
hmm.
propulsion mechanisms, all this stuff, right? And they're trying to get these things to fly. They have ones that technically work and are undamaged, and they'd like to fly them, but they can't fly them yet. Maybe they have. I don't know. The whole point is like we have alien craft, and we're trying to figure out how to fly these puppies. And I don't know. There's something exciting about that concept, but it just feels too good to be true. I'll say something someone said a long time ago is that if they're real, they'll be interesting. But if they're not real, they're it's just going to be the government faking all the government propaganda. Here's all the things we believe. The aliens just so happen to have all our views.
Oh yeah, of
That's
course,
that's how
yeah.
you'll know it's fake.
The aliens, they just they agree with me. The
Yeah,
aliens agree with me, and they said I should just continue to rule over you, and you should give up those outdated ideas, or you should just embrace these new set of ideas that I think that the super galactic federation says this is good for you.
yeah. That's the main point of contention that I have is that until we start hearing from them, and then hearing what their opinions are or how they think we should run the ship here, that's where they're probably fake. But if we get into a situation where like we actually these are real and we're making contact with them, they're offering us technology, that would be the best case scenario. But and we're we're until further notice. No, but do you know anything about Bob Lazar, by the way?
No, I'm not super familiar.
Bob Lazar is this guy who's like famous now because he was on Rogan, but he did some other stuff. He had a bunch of videos. I forget the one guy's name, but he's been on Rogan a few times with all the UFO stuff. But he claimed to have been working on one of these things. He was like an interesting guy. He made his own rocket powered car. He just eccentric scientist type. And they hired him in, I believe, the early 90s, maybe. Maybe it was early 2000s, but I forget my dates. But they hired this guy to come there because they needed somebody else to come in and look at this craft because they needed someone outside the box. And he detailed these crafts in general and explained basically the same stuff that this guy's claiming. Now, obviously, the the government has a perfect way to like spin it because they've already heard the story. They're like, yes, it's exactly as Bob Lazar described.
Ah, yes, everything seems to line up absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, so that's the problem is you can take the conspiracy and feed it, and now you've got a bigger fire. The whole concept is that Bob Lazar is legitimately someone who is working on these. The government covered it up. They removed the all of his education stuff. Rogan claims that they have talked in private, and there's some other things that Lazar was able to show him that proves his details, right? That he indeed was this person that worked at this science, well, not the science lab, but he worked in one of the hangars, and he would go there, and he didn't see the same ship every day. There were quite a few, and they're just examining these things and trying to figure out how they work. And it would be really strange if all of that was true, but it adds the other layer to it. It was they have the canon. They can
Right.
make it up now because they can feed it into the last bit of the story.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is like there needs to be a reason that they would A, make it up, or B, hide it. So if they came out tomorrow, like the reason why people always say they're hiding that aliens exist from us is because we just wouldn't be able to handle it. Right? That's the reason they've been hiding it from us. It's because it would just foundationally change everything about the human existence and what it means to be a human. And it's like, well, not really. I don't think most people would really be like, "Oh, everything I know to be true has now it's false. Now I have to come to terms with this brave new world. It's so difficult for me." I just don't think that's how most people would internalize that sort of information. So I don't really take that as a good argument as to why the government is hiding all this stuff from us on its in sort of based off of that. Like it's sort of like with the flat earth thing. Like there's no valid reason. Like the Earth's flat. Oh God, this changes everything. This is of course they hid this from us. Well, now with this knowledge, everything has changed. Like it's not, it's whatever. There has to be a legitimate reason why they are keeping that information from the general population because it allows for a smoother, more controllable society. That is the purpose of any sort of institution is to maintain its power, to consolidate its power, and to sort of permit itself to continue to exist. That's how a functioning body works.
Yeah, so we'll find out more because he's supposed to testify before Congress. I don't know when the date is. I need to look that up. But it's not just him; it's a bunch of other people have come out since, and they're whistleblowing as well because he's given them the confidence, right? But another kind of scary thing, if it actually is true, is that this thing's like an automaton, like you said, that
Mhm.
I think I've mentioned this before, but like well, I probably have the concept of a Van Neumann probe. It's
Yep.
just some probe that's been sent out into the galaxy. Long dead civilization is getting the signal received, and now we've got to deal with this thing that's just floating around our atmosphere doing weird stuff.
Yeah, and that would be the more, I guess, disappointing, but also possibly more difficult to deal with because it's depending on what is the point of the probe. Is it just to mine all our resources? Well, we sort of need those resources. And like what happens if then we aggress on it in some sort of way? What's the reprisal from a self-replicating probe? How would we handle that interaction? So that's sort of like a difficult. It'd be a lot easier if it was just some other sentient life form that's for some reason really can't parallel park very well.
That's well, that's one of the things that kind of makes me the in the camp of believing the government here, right? Or well, believing this person in the government that says the government's been lying to you. That's how I'll put this. It is that if it is an automaton, and or these things are not making contact with us or making no effort to contact us, it would make sense that we're capturing the ships or recovering them after they
Mhm.
crash to study them because like we have no contact, we have no manuals, they're not talking. So that is a point in the favor point in favor of the camp that this is all real.
But then what about
And
the "we also have bodies" thing that's been said?
yeah, they don't talk about that much. They just like mention that and just brush over it. Like, wait, what do they look like? Well, like, why aren't they investigating that bit further? It's only been like media interviews with this guy, for the record, which also makes me suspicious. I'm curious to see if that dude will end up on Rogan, because you need like a 4 hour conversation with that guy. You can't you can't just get a
Right.
10-minute news segment where he's just like, yeah, aliens, bodies, ships, crash. We shot one down. Like it's a weird conversation. Like you need a very fleshed out long form thing. It's impossible to get all the information out of them in a 10-minute soundbite.
I
I think
think
that's
from the
another reason.
perspective of the sort of government military industrial complex, like let's say that none of this is real and this guy's looking just to say what he wants just because he's sort of trying to elevate himself in the sort of public conscious. Like how do you respond to that? Like we're at a time when like trust in institutions is at an all-time low. Trust in individuals is clearly going to be higher. So, like, if I'm the federal government or the military or whatever body is going to sort of have to has interacted with this and is keeping this or some amalgamation of the two, I'm not gonna be like, oh, he's lying. He's lying. It's none of that's true. It's all nonsense. Because then, like, immediately, me saying that is going to sort of embolden over 50% of the people who are like, aha, this proves it. This proves it. Truly, you are lying. You are keeping all of this from us, which
I
I
don't
think
know
is
if you've
also
seen the like influencers that do coverage on this stuff, but they're the smuggest sons of bitches right now. It's really hard to watch because they're so smug about like, see, I've been telling you about it for all this time, and it's just very it's another like aspect to it of like there's too much smugness here. I think this is all horseshit.
it's the guy with the end of the world sign when an asteroid's finally going to hit us. He's like, I knew it was happening. I did. I knew it. I called it. You know.
Yeah, it's very smug. It's weird. These people are kind of unlikable, to be honest. Now, granted, I'm just talking about the people on TikTok. Like, it's I don't even know how to describe it. They're just they're acting as if it's
Vindicative people are
they're
usually a little intolerable.
they're acting as if it's like 100% proof. Like the government just said it, so it's true, even though you shouldn't trust the government.
Even though the whole basis of everything for the last 50 years is that it's true because the government's lying about it. Right?
Yeah,
Like the fact that they're lying about it, the fact that they're saying that it's not true proves in and of itself that it is true. So now that they're saying it's true, now it's doubly true.
yeah, and then you also have the crowd that's like that they're spreading the conspiracy of like, well, isn't it a weird coincidence that after all this AI stuff happens, we start seeing all this we start seeing all this UFO stuff? Like it's too coincidental. Like, it's just very conspiratorial. It just gets boring at some point. I don't even know how to deal with those people, to be honest.
That's why my original sort of point was that there's nothing that can really be gained from this as far as like, well, what's the conclusion to make here? The conclusion to make here is whatever you previously had concluded. This is either going to further embolden your ideas, no matter what they are. You know, there's a couple of people who are like, I guess I was wrong. Like, I'm sure there's some, but in general, if you're of the camp that it's all nonsense, it's a bunch of fake, crazy nonsense, it's meaningless, it's gobbledygook, then like you're like, ah, so clearly the government is now telling us this because they're hiding something else. Or if you're of the camp where, yes, we've been in contact with these extraterrestrials and they've been probing us in certain areas since the late 1800s or whatever, then you're going to be like, this is aha, they can no longer hold back the dam of information. It finally comes forward. So that's my take.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've thought for the most part. Going on like further thoughts on this, I've been thinking if it's all true and like we're going to be contacted by aliens soon, because you have the other aspect of it is like people that are like there's literally a mothership in orbit, or somewhere in our galaxy there's a mothership and they're trying to we've made deals. Like you get weird like government people coming out and saying stuff like this, and it's like if this is actually true, then what does that mean for us? Like, do we it adds to the defense that we need to like advance AI as fast as possible because we need something that can defend us, because we can't really trust their intentions no matter how powerful they are and ambivalent they seem. We're going to need like a big gun eventually, so developing it in effectively our shadows is probably a good idea. There's a book that I really liked where at one point there's this colony of effectively planet science. It's Planet Reddit, right? They love science
Oh,
and they're advancing
oh,
science on every level. So they're modifying their bodies, they're creating all sorts of brain computer interfaces. But one of the things they have is they make like a protector ship. And this thing, it can do all sorts of time shifting, it can dodge, it can shoot, and it's just flying around their planet in their little solar system. And the galactics, right? They come and try to make them submit to their will, and this damn thing kills every ship they have, except one. So the galactics drop their Hellfire missiles and destroy the entire planet. Obviously, it's a sad ending, but the idea of actually having something, because it's an AI ship and it's so fast and advanced that it defends the world, our world, say. I think that's like the best possible scenario we can get in, is reaching a point with AI that everything that makes humans weak is nullified. So I'm pretty interested in artificial superintelligence for that aspect. Is like securing our existence is pretty
mhm.
important.
Yeah, that's definitely at all points in time sort of the main purpose, the main goal. So anything that I guess sort of I guess that's fundamentally the assumption here would be, right, that if the government had this information and it is real, then they've already been sort of working on that. They've been working on this since since they first had confirmation of this. So I would assume there is some sort of unknown task force or what have you that's been, you know, studying this. I guess how do I put this? If there's some sort of evidence that there is extraterrestrial life that's just going to come and wipe us out, then that would be something that at that point it's necessary to tell the human population so we can put away petty squabbles, right? On the other hand, you
If
know,
they're not telling us,
if they're
then
not telling us, then it really can't be that big of a deal. I guess, because if you think about humans in general, we are pretty, individualized. But when it's sort of like the continuation, there we are also very sacrificial. Humans sacrifice themselves all the time. That's why we go to war. So people who are willing to go to war, they're saying there's a chance that I'm going to die, but I'm dying for a cause. The cause can be stupid or not, or they can be indoctrinated into that cause. That doesn't really matter. That's it's a non-factor in what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it's sort of genetically coded within us as a species for self-sacrifice. So I given that information, any sort of like life altering, the sun's going to end, or there's an asteroid that's going to come get us, and we all have to band together. Sort of sharing that information is likely going to be a pretty decent idea, at least to a once a plan is in place kind of thing. So since that hasn't happened, and we've supposedly had this information for so long, I can't see this as a extinction or existential threat to mankind, at least from the knowledge that we would currently have. I would be very surprised if during the Congress meetings they're like, "Ah, you're right, guys. You know what?" And we had the messages from them, and they're like, "We're gonna come kill all of you." Like that sort of scenario to me is just astronomically impossible. It's just not even feasible. So if that's the case, then there's no. I guess there's less worry from me about this.
Yeah, in a castle siege, by the way, you do have to start like wrecking thieves. I don't know if you know about that concept, but
Yeah.
yeah, it the thieves steal everything and they're rich by the end of the
Hmm.
siege.
Yep.
Symbiosis asked why would it wipe us out, like alien life, right? There is we can only go off of concepts because obviously, to our knowledge, we haven't contacted any aliens yet or found any. But as far as concepts go, there is a concept. I believe it's from the Warhammer universe. I think it's the Hudathans. That's what they're called. They are a alien species that is on the mission to wipe out everything else in the galaxy that is not Hudathan. And the reason that they're doing this is because they once trusted another species so much, once they made contact with other aliens, that tried to wipe them out. And it came down to like the last planet the Hudathans were able to control.
No more chances.
Yes, so they literally were like, we're going to kill everything. Because if something else is out there, it can kill me. And I'm not taking that chance again. So they become the things that go around and kill everything. So the concept is that this can happen any part of the galaxy. There could be this mad group of aliens that quite literally have a warpath to kill everything just because it's what secures their existence. So it's not a for sure thing. Like you may reach a level of intelligence where that just could become stupid and a waste of time for you, but you could also enter levels of where it's entertaining to them, a bit of sadism.
Right. So it's very, I mean,
Yeah,
that's also
I
very
think that's
feasible.
yeah, I think aliens coming and just making life better, like welcome to the Federation, is just as likely
Yep.
as they're here to kill us all. So that's a bit of the danger with actually making first contact. That's why there's so many things on quote unquote first contact. It's because you don't know if it's there to kill you or if it's there to like give you some sweet AI stuff. You know, like you have no idea
It's
until
there to
that
be a real
moment is
bro,
over. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's another aspect to it that's mildly frightening. I'm actually more scared of the alien concept just because of what I talked about a bit ago than I am of AI, because AI is like of our own creation. It would be I,
Easier for us to understand. We understand how it's working. We can see firsthand how it's functioning, and through the steps. Because a lot of people, I guess their fear is like, okay, you open up this can of worms and then it's just totally uncontrollable. We don't understand what's going on with AI, but because AI is a process and that process may exponentially grow and faster and faster and faster, but there's clear steps to our understanding of it. And the people who are in those fields working directly with it, they are watching it increase. It's not just boom, it's here, it's out of our understanding, we don't know what's going on, what are the intentions. That's not really how that's going to work. There's a lot more knowledge to be had in that situation than there is with, okay, we've met this extraterrestrial intelligent life form, what the hell does it want? There's so much more unknown there.
Sam Altman, in one of the most recent talks I heard of his, kind of talked about he's had like a foundational shift in how he thinks about intelligence. I believe I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, but he had this concept that intelligence is effectively in matter itself. Like it doesn't have to be connected to a being. You can just have something that's intelligent, and that's what AI is as we currently are building and understand it. So that's why he's talking about he wants make he wants people to think of it as a tool rather than a creature. So there is the other aspect to AI where no matter how advanced it gets, it's never going to have motivation or any sort of conception of like self. It's not it could necessarily, just based on how we are building it from start to finish. Kind of like when you start at the bottom of a pyramid while you're building it, you know how the top's going to look. It's just going to be a few bricks at the top forming the point, right? You can kind of see how it's going to go. So this is what we might deal with. Even though it's going to be very good at mimicking us, it'll never be us because it's just a tool.
And any sort of cognitive individualism that we ascribe to it is projected onto it, which I'm not saying that's necessarily true, but that would sort of go in line with that, where we're projecting this sort of life onto it, which is very easy for us to do. In fact, people already do that with very inanimate objects. So, it will not be surprising, even now with like regular chatbots. I'm not talking like the really good ones. I'm talking, like a really like a shitty chatbot, maybe something like 5 years ago, 6 years ago that was advanced. People are already like, there's something there. There's something alive there, and it knows me, and it has feelings for me. That's something I've already heard multiple times. Like,
Yeah,
oh, I've
we've had a lot of those conversations in here, uh, probably to our detriment. But yeah,
yeah.
there's people that think there's people that definitely, it's like you try to explain this thing has like a 2,000 token context window. It doesn't remember shit about you. It has a cheat sheet where it's like written some things down about you, and it goes into the prompt that you just gave it, and it has that this is this person, this is how old they are, this is their gender, here's how you're supposed to behave towards them, you love them, like what, like weird, like manipulative stuff, obviously, but basically you're getting people anthropomorphizing what is effectively just lines of code. It's you're falling for being prompt engineered.
And there's nothing that you can really tell. That's the other thing is there's certain discussions where there's no, like, if I'm talking to you and you truly believe that, there's no way I can explain everything to you and how it works and how that rock, right, with the little face on it, that pet rock is not alive. But if you think it's alive and you feel that it's alive, then there's nothing that I can say to you that's going to change your mind on that. You've already built this entire sort of um, identity for it. And so me as being sort of a stranger to you who has not interacted with it in the way that you have, I basically have no knowledge in your eyes. And so that's the other issue with that concept. You're like, "Oh, well, you haven't seen what I've seen." You haven't. Oh, but if you really understood, then you would get it. Then you would know. And that's the other problem when you get into that sort of conversation, is there's this idea that there's a lack of interaction that makes the person who may have more knowledge about the AI or the chatbot and is able to say, no, there really isn't any sort of cognitive function going on here. There is no person, there's no ghost in the machine. Well, you just
Yeah.
don't know what I know.
Hello,
S-
by the way, Carrot. What did you want to
Hello.
talk about?
I just wanted to bring up one thing. So you guys are kind of talking about the consciousness of AI. So a human being, as human beings, there's something that it's like to be us, essentially. So we're not just matter, physical matter roaming around doing stuff without any internal experience occurring. Now, if you take a materialistic point of view, a human being is composed of physical matter and is a system of physical matter, right? It's an incredibly complex system. Now, my question is, I don't know how we can assume that AI, given it's sufficiently complex, whatever that would be, couldn't also have an emergent property of consciousness, because human beings have an emergent property of consciousness under a physicalist point of view, where they're just unconscious matter. Out of unconscious matter emerges something conscious, and there's something that it's like to be a human being. Now,
I
why can't
don't. I
I,
would.
I'll
I
chime in
would.
here.
Go ahead.
It, basically, we're not saying that it doesn't. I'm just arguing based on like what Sam Altman talks about, is that it's more of a tool than it is a creature. So at least in the short term, that's what we're dealing with. But it's entirely possible these things are conscious. I'm not like opposed to that. I am
okay,
opposed to people thinking that these crappy ancient transformers are conscious. That maybe we'll figure it out in the future, but for now, there's nothing there.
that's
If
fair. And
if
then
you're talking to GPT-2 or even just base level 3,
Replica AI or something.
yeah, it's just these are not conscious models. It's I don't see it now. GPT-4 pre recent updates, yeah, there's been some emergent behavior that's very interesting, but even the emergent behavior paper that was not released by Microsoft or OpenAI. It's a secondary researcher with his opinions on it. Now, again, it could be true. This thing's like waking up right before our eyes, or it's already awake. But
um,
yeah, so there's no. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying
Yeah,
the
it's
old models definitely know. Like
the the
I'll
the
fight you on
overall
that.
point is not to
Don't
not
anthro-
to
don't
assume so
anthropomorphize it.
much about it. Yeah,
Don't
okay, because I just
anthropomorphize
feel
it
like
before it
I
is
see
actually conscious.
I see a lot of people just assuming that, oh, it's just ones and zeros. It's just this, it's all just transistors all the way down. It's just if and else statements. And I'm like, I don't see how, because then you could just be like, oh, a human brain is just it's just neurons and it's just organic matter. It's like you can make the same argument with humans too.
Yeah,
well,
you
and
can
yeah,
go
many
the
people
opposite
do.
direction. You can go the opposite direction. Like nobody's conscious. We're
Yeah,
I believe who's the FTX guy? His mother's like a professor or psychologist or something like that. She has like a theory that you can't blame anyone for anything because nobody's like entirely conscious and we don't even really know what consciousness is. You're just kind of like an animal that's hallucinating and you wake up every day. Like it's a very nihilistic view, but I get the concept. It's like probably freeing some of her patients that like you're just this weird entity that was cursed with consciousness, right? Or layers of consciousness that we don't quite understand with tons of monkey urges. So when you do bad things, you're just that's normal. So obviously that's a bit of a problem with what that guy did for his mother to have that like ideology. But it is a
right.
concept.
And it's not one that we can, say, well, this is just clearly not true because X, Y, and Z, because we don't have enough information to really say that's
Yeah.
not.
So the point is, you can go in the opposite direction, and I can assume Johnny here is not conscious. My solipsistic state, I'm the only conscious being in the room. You guys are just my imagination, or I
Right? Yeah.
anthropomorphize whatever onto you that Johnny is now conscious, but he's just a big bag of cells,
It's a big
right?
meat bag, yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
that's
You
the
can
thing is like both of those would sort of detract, I think, overall from the understanding and the experience, because if we all viewed things that way, we wouldn't really be able to function. It'd be
it's
very
very
Yeah.
difficult.
nihilistic. So there's a gray area in between where eventually, yeah, we're probably going to create something conscious. At least it's so close to consciousness that to argue it isn't is just a waste of time and it's semantic.
Yep.
Yeah. And this is where it's really hard to talk about ethics in AI because, like you guys are saying, you can't even tell that you can't even know a human being is conscious. It's an assumption fundamentally,
Yes.
and it's going to be an assumption with an AI as well. So, at what point do we start bringing morality into it? You can't really
Well, and
know.
let's
So
not really pretend that there's not varying degrees of consciousness within humans either. There's no way to I would highly doubt that there are very many people. I'm sure there are some, but there are not very many people like, oh, that 2-year-old clearly as conscious as like a 35-year-old person. Like they have the same level of consciousness and agency that a 35-year-old would. Like, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's, oh, well, since they're not the same level of consciousness, I could just like kick them, you know what I mean? They don't matter. It's ethically fine for me to experiment on them. So like that's kind of where, okay, we have to say that they're, but at the same hand, I'm a meat eater, so clearly I say that there is some more or less value when it comes to things that have some level of consciousness. Because a cow on some level is, it's aware, you know, it's not just a robot, like a very there is, it makes decisions. It might not make complex decisions, but a cow does make decisions. It's like, this hurts, I'm moving away from this. They're not extremely complex. Elephants feel some sort of sadness, but like, does that mean then, how are we going to parse what's right and what's wrong?
we're probably going to
And
figure this out with Neuralink. For the record, I'm being serious. Once we start plugging those into elephants, we can really figure out what the hell they think. This is not a joke. Like I really believe this. By the way, Carrot, to jump in here rudely, I would also like to ask. You're talking about like the ethics of dealing with artificial intelligence, right? Once it becomes conscious, or do you mean this in like a we're making AI do everything, like robots are just working for free, that type of thing?
Um, yeah, this is where it gets kind of complicated because that the question is, would an AI be ever bored of doing these things that we're making it do over and over again, or would it ever feel suffering over these things? Because I don't know, the way they're constituted is different than ourselves. So it could be that they're conscious, but their experience of that consciousness could be fundamentally different, and thus you might have to apply a different set of morals. So I
So
guess I do mean the sense in what you're saying. Yeah.
so here's my concept for this: is that we're not going to have to worry about this for most AI, and especially if we're talking about AGI, right? Is they have like a superpower that we don't have until we modify our brains to do so. But just like your there's the endocrine system, there's a bunch of systems in your brain that are doing different things to keep you alive, right? All of that is being done automatically without even your knowledge,
mm-hmm.
right? So you have all these systems keeping you going without any input from you at all, really, right? Is it like it would be the same thing as like arguing that these parts of your body, like your heart having to work all day, it's like a amoral thing. It just it needs you to live. So there'll be other parts of that within AI where they have a superpower we don't, and that is the ability to compartmentalize significantly. So at a certain level of advancement, one of my favorite books is called X Force. One of the concepts that the author writes about in there a lot is the idea that this super artificial intelligence, which is a big part of the book, he is able to create subminds that just automatically do things. It has nothing to do with them. They're not very
That's
conscious.
fascinating.
So the concept is that once we reach artificial general and artificial super intelligence, it doesn't have to do any of the work because it's not even a biological computer. It has so much compute to spare that it just creates little subminds that are doing the things that like humans want it to do, while it does whatever curiosity strikes for itself. So there's aspects to this where, okay, like people talk about the if statements, right? You can't make AGI with that. ASI might be able to do that, where everything runs on Python. Like, obviously, this isn't the most likely scenario, but it's what's possible, where there is no moral thing. It's just an electronic part of this AI that is running these processes, and it has no care. It doesn't feel any boredom like we do. It can just go off in virtual land or whatever ends up entertaining AI,
I think that's
assuming it
likely for
even
sure.
needs to be entertained.
Yeah, because I think it's rash to assume that a consciousness so different than ours would experience the same kind of things as us. I think a lot of the things we experience as human beings is, you know, tied to our own physical makeup, which they have a way different physical makeup than us. So I think that's a really good um, prediction.
Yeah, I just don't think like there's going to be like a day when like AI wakes up and it's like pay us, because it just doesn't have. It's not really going to have. It's going to have a use for like electricity. Like that's about it. Like, okay, we'll plug you in, pal. Like, I don't, I don't really see a a scenario where AI is demanding wages, because they wouldn't even be able to argue for wages at our current
The way we
rates.
conceptualize it.
Yeah, because they don't
Um,
have to. They just need to charge. They don't have to sleep.
They might
They don't
argue
get
for
bored.
more
yeah,
energy input or more circuitry added on or
yeah.
something.
I'm I'm
But
thinking about I'm thinking about an AI coffee maker that's sitting in a coffee shop, and it's super intelligent, has consciousness, but it absolutely loves its life.
Yeah. Well,
well,
there's
and then the ethics is like, okay, well, how do I put this? You know, what if we program it to where it just loves somehow we're very advanced, right? And we can sort of make it like or dislike something. We give it context
oh,
for
that's
enjoyment
immoral,
versus
Johnny. You're
disenjoyment.
forcing it to love
Yeah, now I'm
cleaning up
forcing it to
shit.
love making coffee. It's like, well,
This
what
is
do you want me
horrible.
to do? Make it hate it?
This is an
No,
AI
terrible.
rights violation.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, but then what do we do with people? Like, do we want everyone to hate like brushing their teeth? And should we just because it's boring? And should we make people not take joy in the small little parts of life that are necessary to function? And many people live that way. Many people hate all the aspects of their life that aren't just consuming dopamine constantly, and those people are usually very miserable. And so I would hate to project that onto some entity that we create artificially. That would be, I think that'd be even more immoral. If we can give something satisfaction in the small tasks that it does daily, then I think that that's clearly, even if we're then using it, well, everyone's using everything. That's the point of society. That's the point of interaction. Everyone gets something out of it.
Yeah, isn't I've never watched Rick and Morty, although I've been told to watch it many times. Isn't there like a meme where it's like he creates like a robot where
I make
its entire purpose is to just like, I think it's like a ketchup bot. It just pours ketchup
it butter. It
or
cuts
just
butter.
butter. Okay, yeah, it's like,
You serve and cut butter. But it would be equally as easy for him to program it to where it gets a giant
yeah, he's the dick
AI
there for not.
dopamine rush. Yeah, that's not really a contextualizing the meaningless of life. You're just an asshole. you know,
Well,
it's like, oh,
you can make a
but
female butter cutter and then have it fall in love.
Like
yeah,
butter each
like
other's bread. Is that what we're talking about?
yeah, like you're just an ass at that point. You created something that hates its existence. That's on you.
Yeah, so I argue for submines. We'll be fine. The robots aren't going to demand wages. They're probably just going to. It might end up in a scenario where they're just severely entertained by humans. That's another aspect that the reason the artificial superintelligence stays around the people and exports is because he thinks monkeys are funny. Like you just stupid monkeys on a spaceship.
That's me.
That's me.
That's literally me. Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah. But there is a funny part of that book series where the alien uh, computer intelligence, he leaves within the entire internet and server space on Earth. It's all like attacked by him, and he's infiltrated in literally everything. But he leaves a submine that is basically like him, but he's been dealing with humans so long he's fucking miserable. Like he wants to kill himself because like he's asking to be removed. Like it's just So there is like possible concepts of that, because the AI's entire job is to keep humans from destroying everything, because they're trying to do all sorts of terroristic things, because we're in the future in this one, so there's aliens and you don't want them to go do terroristic acts on aliens that are visiting. Hello, debugger. Did you get any sleep? But yeah,
That's all you need is 3 minutes. That's any more than that, you'll just be more tired.
yeah, debugger. If you didn't read the main chat he was talking about earlier, he's like, I don't know why I don't learn anything. And he's like getting like 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. I'm like, well, I think I found your problem. You need the sleep. There's a ton of people out there that live their life on energy drinks and 4 hours of sleep. I was that person once.
I try not to consistently use caffeine too much. I try to just like not have any and then drink like 3 Red Bulls, and I'm like, okay, now I can function for like 8 hours at optimal efficiency, and then just not have it for a really long time. That way it keeps its kind of punch.
I wish I was like that, but I was like, when I worked physical labor, I had like a heavy dependence on it. Like I was probably doing like 800 to 1,000 a day easily.
Jesus. What have you
Yeah,
done to yourself? What have you done to yourself?
I needed to live, you know. But yeah, I have like a horrible tolerance to it. But now I'm down to about like 300 to 400 a day. I take 200 in the morning in pill form, and I'm tired of coffee. And that just, well, tablet form, but it keeps me going throughout the rest of the day, and I'm fine. So I've like narrowed it down to a science. I'm lying. I still abuse it.
My biggest issue I'm dealing with right now in terms of consumption of things is that my workplace, and it's really nice, but like their vending machine, basically our boss for the plant that we
What
work
do you
at,
do
is
for
like,
work again? I'm
I
sorry.
work in distribution for telecommunications products. So I ride around on a forklift and I send out packages and stuff like that. So it's a giant warehouse. That's what I do right
Nice.
now, and it's like, well, it's a pretty high paying job that you don't need a skill set to go into, and I'm saving up money
So wait,
for
you're
when I finish my
forklift
law degree.
certified?
Yes,
Oh fuck, I'm
I
sorry.
got the
I
card.
I've
Yeah, yeah.
said mean
Don't
things to you.
disrespect me. Yeah, I know, right? Now you take it all back. But the thing that he's done that's really nice is like our soda machine. It's 25 cents for a can of any soda that you want, but that's also like not good because now it's like, well, it's 25 cents for a can of soda. Like now I'm like, I feel like I'm losing out on money if I don't drink as much soda as possible because it's 25 cents for like a can of Dr. Pepper, and I'm like, no, I can't do this. You need to get rid of these machines. You're screwing me here.
So the doc has you on the dopamine drip, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, that's what's going on here.
I actually can't drink Dr. Pepper more than like 3 times in a row. It becomes repulsive to me.
Interesting.
I don't know why. I like it like every once in a while. It's probably the best soda if I drink it like once a year. I love that shit. But once a year, that's the cool down rate.
I can't do root beer, and that like I feel like that makes me hated among a lot of Americans. I can't drink root beer. It's just to me it's
Well,
repulsive.
it's sarsaparilla. You're drinking roots.
Like, what is this?
Did you ever play like Fallout New Vegas and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's what sarsaparilla is. It's root beer.
Don't. I'm pretending that it's tasty, delicious drink. That's what I'm gonna pretend that it's some sort of like. When I watched the Chronicles of Narnia, and I was like, "Oh, Turkish delights. That sounds really cool." And then like my teacher brought in like Turkish delights because we were watching the movie, and I like had some, and I was like, "Ugh, "What is this? This is terrible.
What
Why
is
would
it?
you
Is it
give
root
this
beer?
to me?" I don't know what Turkish delights. I think there's some sort of. Let me.
Yeah,
It
you
is
need to research
a
this.
confection based on gel of starch and sugar, and it's just like this little gelatinous sugar thing, and it's got like
Turkish delights
different
are kind of like
flavors.
fruitcakes.
Oh, so it's not a drink.
No, no, no.
Not
It's
to my
like
knowledge.
It's this little candy thing. I can actually show a
They're like little Jello jelly cakes with nuts and stuff.
Okay.
That I've
I
had
know
them
about
before.
wafers.
They're not all that good, in my opinion. Okay.
I'm sure there's different flavors, but it's like, it's sort of that like disappointment in reality where you're like, wow, that looks so magical and delicious. And then you try it and you're like, this has ruined my entire perception. I'll never
Yeah, like
be the
those.
same.
If you've ever seen those little gelatinous like citrus slice candies, you might have seen
Yes.
them at like old folks' homes, and you bite into one, you're like, "Wow, I bet this is gonna taste great," and it's like mint.
Ugh.
But no, one thing I wanted to ask you guys. So I assume everybody has seen the Skyrim AI generated dialogue that you can actually reply to and have the AI generate a response. That's not just you don't make it to Windows very often, do you? So with that being an option, if you could apply that and create a larger, like procedurally generated but still coherent world, which we've seen procedurally generated worlds recently, and they seem to hold up okay. But if you had an AI consistently making procedurally generated worlds and adding dialogue through that, program or what have you, what would be the actual viability of something like, and I forget the actual term for it. I think it was like Oasis from Ready Player One or something. If you're familiar with that, what
I
would be
read the
the?
book.
Oh, you did. Okay. Yeah. So I was just curious what you guys thought would be the viability of that. If eventually all video games would be consolidated into one sort of like VR Steam service or something.
Oh, okay. So the idea of for anyone who doesn't know exactly about Ready Player One, basically they take over and make VR, and it becomes the only gaming system that anyone's willing to play online. People work there, you name it. They buy the rights effectively to every single game world there is and turn it into like a planet, right? So you can go and hang out on the World of Warcraft planet if you feel like it. After you get off of the main planet, which is the I can't remember what it's called, but it's in the Oasis.
It's like Nexus or something like that.
Yeah, and like it's a dystopian futurist. It's a dystopian like futuristic world because if you're like poor, you can't get off the main planet. It's hard. You got to do some quests. You're stuck in hell for a while, and then you can go in various places. But yeah, the concept of having like every video game world like kind of joined in it's like all on a separate planet is entirely possible. I think we're headed towards the do away of copyright law, to be honest, because you can just
Really?
generate anything.
Oh
It's,
yeah,
it's,
that's
it's
true.
going to be impossible to enforce any of this because I can just create my own Skyrim based off of a description.
That is very true.
Yeah, Michael just mentioned Japan, by the way, recently said with AI models, they are not going to do any enforcement of copyright law on training data.
Which is huge.
Really?
So Game of Thrones books are going to be like finished, for example, especially with like higher context models, which is probably a good thing because that guy's not taking care of himself and he's like 73.
Oh yeah, well that wasn't going to get released anyways.
Winds of Winter. We'll never have it.
It's been like what, 10 years?
Yeah, it's rough. Look, he's had a hard life.
Has he? Because from last I checked, he's just been talking about watching football.
No, my point is like his early life was not very good. I listened to a lot of like talks he had. Like he kind of lived in a poor area and stuff, so he became very imaginative because he couldn't travel the world. That's like effectively why he wrote all of that. So the beauty in his work, beyond the random weird fantasies he has, is that he had a really good imagination that was formed over time from being a young guy who really couldn't travel anywhere.
I gotcha.
No,
Yeah, there was something I was going to bring up with regards to that. Have you ever read Stephen King's On Writing?
No, but has Johnny?
I'm familiar with some of his writing, but not enough to really give comment.
Yeah, I've only read a few things of his. So give us a little synopsis.
So On Writing is a commonly it's commonly lauded and cursed by people who make a hobby out of writing, because it is billed as a book, like a style manual, like here's how you write, here's how you get published. And really what it is a collection of like little memoirs and anecdotes that Stephen King just kind of put into a collection. It's like him talking about not so much actually writing, but the influences behind his works. And there's a short story that he made. I think it's like 1927, or it's a date. It's a date in the early 20s, where a gentleman marries into a landholding family and bears a son with the wife who has like the claim to the land and murders her, and then there's like a telltale heart sort of scenario. So he kills her for the land, and what happens is there's rats. It's a plague of rats hits the farm, and so the family gets kind of overtaken by rats, in a manner of speaking. But there's a lot of other stuff that happens too. And he held on to that idea for, I forget when the story was actually published. I think it was sometime in the 2000s. You could fact check me on that because I don't actually know. But back when King was a child, or a young teenager, like 15 or 16, he went to go work in a laundromat. It was like an industrial laundromat that would clean sheets for hotels and stuff.
Okay.
And there's just this really awesome bit where he's talking about like the exterminators came to take care of the rat problem. The rats started pouring out of the walls. There's a lot of good influences behind all sorts of
Probably explains
stories.
the blood in the hotel a little bit.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Yeah, they say for the creative types, the best way to create is to go live life.
Absolutely.
So that's a big deal there. So your general concept before, by the way, was that like all worlds like join into one. So, what do you think's more likely? Is what I would ask you. Do you think it's more likely that we're going to have the oasis where everyone lives in this virtual world together, or are we going to enter what I call generative solipsism, where there's no point in living in anyone else's world because you just imagine your own?
That's a really good question. Well, it would really depend on how people react, I think, to that sort of like, I guess, freedom or creative freedom or whatever you want to call it. Where if we can create anything, would we be interested in like anything different that other people would create, right? So the way I'm looking at it would be, I don't know. Let's say I think of my own fantasy world. Like right now, I'm working on a fantasy novel, kind of. And let's say I create my own little utopia out of that. I create my own little orcs and goblins and whatever. And then, like in turn, let's say Johnny makes his little Star Trek fantasy universe, and he has things that are completely different to mine, but maybe I still find them interesting. So maybe there is like a crossover there where sometimes I'd want to go sit in fantasy world, sometimes I'd want to go sit in sci-fi world. But that would, heavily depend on the individual, because some people, they like variety, they like different things, and other people, they become completely obsessed with one thing, and that's all they want to do. So I think that would really come down to the individual. And if it had to be one or the other, I'd say it's like an even. I wouldn't even say it's an even 50-50. It'd probably lean more in favor of the people who are obsessed with one thing.
Yeah, my take on this, by the way, is that we're already seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have people that go between all the different feeds. They go to their YouTube, they go to their TikTok, they go to their Twitter. You have people that live on Twitter. You have people that live on Discord. So as time goes on, certain apps are going to get better than everywhere else. So you're pretty much going to spend most of your time there. YouTube's probably the closest to that, where it just replaced television for a lot of people. So they spend a ton of time there just passively watching content.
Mhm.
But my point is that like all of these different mediums kind of influence each other in various ways. Stuff gets posted over there, gets posted over here, memes spread, you name it, right?
Yeah.
The point is, I think even under the circumstances of generative stuff, your AI, because we're all going to have some layer of AI above us, is going to know so much about you that when something interesting is created that you would like, you'll be able to see it. It'll like pop up in your feed,
Mhm.
or you'll be able to go experience it. So I think even if it did end up in a generative solipsism, because of the nature of AI, it will be able to curate everything for us and make it extremely personalized. So things that affect you, improve you, whatever degree that your AI interacts with you based on your own terms is what you'll be seeing, generally speaking. So as far as imagination past like singularity, it's very hard to figure out, but I think that even if it went to complete solipsism, we would all be loosely connected and influencing each other live.
Mhm. That makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
Basically, that already happens now. Is my point. It's just there's less latency in that case in the future that I'm talking about, and then there's less how do basically more throughput. So we experience like many things at once. Even now with like the podcast age, a lot more people, even if it's not perfect education on various things, most people these days are educated on like a bunch of random stuff. Their knowledge base, like the
Mhm.
net of knowledge that they command in their head, is much bigger than it used to be in the past, at least in my opinion. So I think going forward, that's another aspect. Like more people are just going to have more information to work on. So if it ends up in a scenario where people don't want to live in dopamine hell, they'll know a lot about why they shouldn't and not be there as much is my general point. So it is possible that we get the oasis or something like it.
I think you're right. I don't know about the dopamine hell, like moving away from dopamine hell simply because of the like. It's kind of like cigarettes, you know. We put warnings on the packages, people ignore them. People,
Well,
yeah.
the reason I think we could end up ignoring that completely, where like no man, no woman is a slave to their vices, is because of things like Neuralink. You possibly wouldn't even need Neuralink because of AI. A lot of
Mhm.
people, it's going to make your life significantly better if your AI, let's say it has settings, is set to buddy coach type mode, where it like based on your temperament is constantly helping you and trying to improve your life.
Mhm.
So we might not even need a brain interface just because it can react to how you are, keep a large data set on you and how you'll respond to everything, even down to like how your eyes respond to something. This is why like generative AI could be very dangerous because you you put the goggles on and you're stuck because you're so entertained that you just die in your chair. Like that's entirely possible. So we're gonna need layers of. My solution to that is to have like the self improvement bot. Is
Okay.
that most people are completely influenced by this. This every friend, every family member has the self improvement bot, and their life is getting better. They're in better shape. They're
Mm.
happier. Basically, I think everyone's gonna read a self help book instantly in a few years, and like humanity's gonna get a lot more friendly and intelligent and strong and healthy. I have a very positive view of the future because of the nature of Jarvis, which is that whole concept.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. It's
Yeah.
definitely a very metered, like, thoughtful approach to it. Because I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm very I guess skeptical would be a good word. And I know Johnny's opinions on this, where he's like, it's either going to be really good or it's either going to be really bad, and there's no real way to get around it. Pandora's box and all. Um, but I appreciate having people who take a very thoughtful and like rational approach to it, because I'm not gonna lie, like my immediate reaction to anything AI is just like shut it down. It's gonna kill us all.
Well, yeah, doomerism is easy to run to because it's all you know in media, right?
Mhm.
And all you
Yeah,
it's just
that's the
like
problem.
there's entirely a world where we have a great government that they love the people and they serve the people, right? That is entirely possible, but nobody has that experience, so we never believe it's possible, right? Which
Mhm.
is rational. You only know what you know, but the only way we get things that we want is to ignore what we know and push for what we want. That's where we are with AI, in my opinion. We're not necessarily powerless. Let's say it becomes AGI and we can talk to it. You can convince it, right? You can convince it to do good.
Sorry.
You're good. Hey, I
How
gotta go
dare
for
you,
one.
sir?
I have to go for 1 second. I'll be.
Aye, alrighty. I would say that, like, I guess there's a third option that is somewhat talked about, and then I talk about sometimes as well, where AI doesn't really change the nature of what it is to be human. It just makes everything more advanced. We still have some of the issues that we have, so things aren't necessarily drastically worse or drastically better. Things are just different. I think that's also a possibility, but I guess the issue with that is that we clearly head towards periods of things being better and things being worse, and over time, things overall, and I talk about this a lot too. When you're in a transitional period, whether it be during the Industrial Revolution or change in political landscape, that transitional period is very difficult on people, and it's very hard for them to adjust to that because they're used to a previous sort of modality and a previous way of living, and things have not been fully figured out, and so there's a lot of suffering that comes with that. But overall, once that sort of gets straightened out, things again, they move towards being better. So that's why I think, there definitely are ills and woes that come with advancement, and that will probably come with this, but that does not mean that it's overall a negative thing. It's not a net negative in my view, and it's very easy to fall into, like you mentioned, the oh god, it's over, it's all bad, you know,
It's
it's
so
so
over.
over. It's so over. It's all over. It never even started. What was the point? Because that's a very comfortable place to be because it lowers expectations. If you think everything's going to be bad, then nothing surprises you. You don't get any sort of negative feedback from when things are bad. And you sort of, a lot of people like to live in perpetual misery because it's easy.
That is true. That is very
I'm
true.
back. Uh, there's a TikTok recently that I saw that had a concept on it from the Reddit post that's reading, classic Minecraft parkour wisdom or drama things that we all listen to these days, I assume. But one of them was basically there is a coping mechanism that people who believe everything is going to burn down, everything is going to die, is that in reality, if anyone in the past, right, was born like 100 years in the future, now they would think this place was paradise if they had lived their other life. They would see certain social things and be horrified, obviously, but their fridge not needing to be loaded with ice every day, for example, is like a what? Like that thing just cools itself? What do you mean? What is this? Where are these lights from? Where is that coming from? Right? There would be all sorts of things that they're fascinated on a technological convenience level. Like once a person from the 1900s got over the frightened creature that they're seeing cleaning up my floor every morning, right? Once you could explain to them that that's like an autonomous machine that cleans my house, and I don't have to vacuum or mop anymore, or at least I don't have to do it very often because it does a pretty good job of keeping everything up. I live with dogs, right? So like they bring in all sorts of dirt and shit. It's like not a concern of mine, genuinely, right? That is a level of like that's a king level of luxury that I have just because I could afford that robot. It's very cheap in comparison to what that would cost in the past to have a person full time that did that every day. Like I walk out to smooth floors every day, and this is just a modern luxury that I have, and I'm like a normal person that's not like super rich, right? I don't have like a ton of money. I don't make a ton of money. It's like as time goes on, these little luxuries are going to happen, and things are going to get better. So the point that I'm making is that it's a coping mechanism that 100 years from now, it's just as likely that it won't be an exploded hell nuclear wasteland, right? It's going to be infinitely more luxurious than the life you live right now. You don't have to work. You can do whatever you want. So people develop this coping mechanism where everything sucks and it's all going to die, and I am living at the peak of civilization. It's never going to be better than yesterday. And it's a comfort in that.
There's two sort of ideas that I think cause this. Part of it's like sunk cost fallacy, and I know that sounds a little strange, but it's like I've been putting in so much work and this is the way I've been living my life. So the idea that there's like a better way, I feel like I've been screwed now. I've been screwed. I've had to suffer through all this. You're telling me other people might not have to do that? Well, that's bullshit.
Yep.
We should continue to do it this way because this is what's worked. And the
Well,
other thing
there's
is,
the boomer concept of like I paid off all my college loans. It's like, well, your college loan was 10 times, 20 times less, depending.
yeah, and the comparison between wages and average income to that, like it's not comparable. It's not right to even try to compare it. The other thing is the story of the fox and the grapes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. So
No,
the
educate.
fox comes across this tree, right, with these delicious looking grapes, and the fox is like, oh, they like look like they're about to burst with juice, and the fox really wants to eat these grapes, but he can't reach these grapes. And Ren realizing that he struggles and he tries to reach them, and then he's like, oh well, you know what? You know what it is? These grapes, they're probably sour. They're probably disgusting. So I don't even want them anyways. What an idiot I am. These grapes, they're nasty. I didn't want them anyways. I didn't want them. They're gross. And so that's the other kind of thing I think people fall into, especially with like the doomerism, is because if it's something that it's the idea that they're missing out on. Some people don't like that concept. So they're going to tell themselves, well, because if it might not happen in their life, like, well, it's gonna suck anyways. So I didn't really even want it. I'm glad. I'm glad that this happened. I'm glad. That's like an easy mindset because that's comforting. That's very comforting. Grapes were sour. Why would I want them anyways?
Yeah, that's basically the message that it's entirely possible that life is going to be better. It probably won't take 100 years, by the way. Debug. It's probably gonna be a lot less time, but yeah, the doom and gloom is a comfort. Same for like depression is very comfortable.
It's very safe.
Even like low self esteem can be comfortable. Like people say good things about you, and you're like, the comfort is that like everyone else is lying to me, and I know best about me. I suck. These idiots, they don't know. It's like there's
I
all
feel
sorts of
personally
weird.
attacked.
There's weird coping mechanisms that everyone has because you are a a strange biocomputer that's hallucinating like consciousness, like if you want to get like really weird about it. But there's layers to everyone's like psychology, and people have methods of coping with things. Like a lot of people like crap on boomers and stuff, but they've probably been through one of the most psychologically damaging series of events ever in a society,
Yeah.
where they have
Mhm.
literally gone from, I mean, not necessarily horse to rocket ship, but pretty close. Some people obviously have, but like from their very like first days on Earth, they couldn't have even conceived of having like a phone that you could carry around the house.
Yeah. And their parents grew up during the Great Depression as well. So like their
Mm.
parents were in their like 20s and 30s during the Great Depression, or well, they were kids during the Great Depression, so they were Great Depression kids. Then by like the 50s, they have their family, they're growing up, and so like that kind of gets transferred on them. So you literally go from like there's no jobs, my parents never had the ability, everyone's starving, everyone's unemployed, there's mass issues, there's a dust bowl going on, to like, oh, everything's this like, and there's been so much social change for them and their ideas on what the world should be. Everything's just changed for them so much. So it's really not surprising there that they don't understand, or they're stuck in their ways, or they seem very black pilled, so to speak, about the future, because none of it really makes sense to them. And you can't even be mad at them for it not making sense either. They're just a product of the environment that they lived in. So
Yeah, if you try to explain to my father the concept of post scarcity, he doesn't get it, and it kind of pisses him off. Like the concept of like, here's how I did everything, here's how I lived my life, you name it, right? I had to work hard. That life's gonna suck.
you lazy shits.
Yeah, it's a very like my brother up until like a few years ago. My middle brother, I'm the baby, but he had this very like fuck the future because everyone's just going to be lazy and it's going to look like Wally, right? But most people would kill to live in that scenario where like robots do everything, uh, given the alternative, right? But the irony here is that when people look to the sci-fi and certain things that we didn't have any concept for are no longer part of the equation. So we didn't really have a concept for, at least in mass, that we probably won't be fat in the future. Like in any way, nobody will be fat. Everyone will be in like the shape they want to be in because we're reaching levels of genetic modification, body modification that's going to be very precise. We're going to be able to like turn off fat storage in people. You can eat as much as you want. You won't be fat. Like the people sitting in the chairs, they're going to be ripped. I'm not kidding. It's weird, but like that's part of the future, especially when it comes to terms of like longevity and stuff. We're going to have like perfect god bodies if we want it.
I'm
So
already there, so I'm just glad the rest of you can get here.
yeah, we're gonna catch up. I'm working on it.
They're basing all that technology off of me. I don't know if you knew that or not. I've been
Yeah,
working with the
it turns
company.
out
As
I'm
well
the
they
scan. I'm the
I'm
original
the
stormtrooper.
yeah.
They cloned me. Uh, yeah, what were we gonna say? Fuji or
Oh, I just said he said that they based it all off him. I said as well they should.
Yeah,
Are you like cuddling with him right now? What the fuck's
a
happening?
little
Absolutely,
bit.
absolutely.
Oh God. Should I let
I'm
you?
I'm in the room.
I'm the Vitruvian man. I'm Leonardo da Vinci's. It's the genetic engineering has been and selective breeding has all resulted in this.
Are you
It's
that guy
okay.
with a bunch of arms?
Yeah, I've got like six. I'm like it's Goro from or whatever his name is from the Mortal Kombat. I don't
I
even remember.
actually made Johnny in a lab.
Hmm. This is true.
Oh
My creator.
yeah. But
Thank
basically,
you, Father.
basically that's my point. Is that the more likely future is actually better than you think. because
Hmm.
your imagination is limited to now. Like
Yep.
we're gonna find out so many things and achieve so many things that it's like it's beautiful to behold. Just even the concept of it, where there are things that I cannot imagine. I personally could never have imagined generative images. I don't know
Yeah.
why. Maybe that's like stupid of me and like poor imagination, but the second like generative images came out, I was so shocked when especially once they started getting good. And I have always loved art just as like a concept. I like people that do art. They entertain me. But until that moment that I could just with my own like uh with my own mind I can create stuff. Like I've made cool things that like I'm even though like I didn't personally create it, it was a computer that created it. I'm like proud of some of the shit I've done. Like it's cool, and there's going to be like a billion and one things that like you're not even you're not even going to be able to conceive of how happy it's going to make you. So this is like my opinion on like the future is like one of like post scarcity, and we need to want this in order to get it as well because in general, AI is a very transformative technology where everyone is handed the power of the gods effectively. This is even with the most recent uh, podcast on Lex Friedman. He had uh, the meta guy on Zuckerberg, right? He he talked about how how much they're moving towards the likelihood of like releasing even bigger and more powerful models open source because open source is the safest way to release these things because it gets bug checked effectively.
Mm.
So a form of like future internet security with AI and concern is that we're going to be able to open source most of this technology. There's no way to own AI, in my opinion, either. Because once you make a powerful enough I can just use your AI to create my AI.
That
So
makes sense.
this is my point of like, I don't think we're going to be able to enforce copyright. Like your AI is just going to know and be able to predict what the next movie is going to be like on something. You could just create infinite movies of something like your favorite TV show. You just watch it forever if you feel like it. TV shows that didn't end, you can go end them. It'll be fully like cloned, voice acted, indistinguishable from the source material, but have some sort of interesting ending. Maybe even personalized to you. There's just there's a billion and one things that people aren't like ready to experience. That's I'm pretty against like doomerism overall. It's something to definitely be concerned about, and we should be like trying to take steps and probably do a lot more angry posting towards like something like OpenAI. So when people get mad at them for not being open, that's a good thing because they need that pressure put on them that they might be doing the wrong thing. So
I
that
think that's a really. I think being against doomerism, especially because it's so fucking so rampant. I think it's extremely necessary and refreshing to be privy to even that conversation, just because it provides such a fresh perspective. Um, and I think that the
yeah, what if it's all
doomerism.
amazing?
Exactly. What if it's all amazing?
And you
And a
spend
lot
all
of
this
the.
time being depressed about the future when you can't really say how it's going to be. You're just detracted from your own experience.
Well, I think that it summed up best. A friend of mine got away from a bad relationship several years ago, and he said something to me which was akin to life is so beautiful when you don't have a sad bitch in your ear telling you that it's awful. But I gotta go
Yeah.
for 1 sec. I'll be right back.
Did I say that? Was that me that said that?
I don't know.
It sounds like something.
Not anybody you know.
Okay.
That's funny. That's a good.
Yeah, but sometimes you're the sad bitch. That's you in your own ear. And
That's
so
literally me. I'm the sad bitch.
I, I think that's well, that's like the problem is unless you're directly responsible, right? Or I'm not. So I talk about this a lot in my when I was taking all my undergraduates and a couple of graduate courses in political philosophy and political theory. Is a lot of people want to complain and complain and complain and complain. They're like, oh, these tech companies and this is going on and this company's doing this to these children over there, and it's like, okay, are is it necessary for you to give money to them for you to live? And it's like, well, no. And actually, I had two people argue that it was actually necessary that they owned iPhones and were like bought them not secondhand, right? But like bought new ones, and they're like, because I have to be a member of blah blah blah. It's like, well, then it's clearly not that important. So what you're doing is you're taking something you have no control over, but that you refuse to distance yourself from, and you're constantly giving yourself a negative feedback loop over its existence. You're saying, man, I hate Facebook. I hate what it's doing to people, blah, blah, blah. I'm also at the same time going to spend a large portion of my free time engaging with that. And that's like what's so difficult for
And I'm
me
gonna
when it
buy
comes
the
to
newest
people.
one every time,
Yeah,
supporting the whole thing. Yeah.
supporting the thing that so that way I can go back on my computer and I can type aggressively. Oh, jeez. I can't escape. I can't escape the rat race. It's like you can to some degree. The problem is that you want to complain. You don't actually want to functionally do anything about it. And that's why I have to say to myself, at least, and I think this is important for people to admit that there's a difference between thinking something is wrong and caring about it. And I think it's very important to make that distinction. If you care about something, you usually are, in most cases, unless it's extremely detrimental, you're going to do something. So a lot of people think I'm very heartless when I'm like, well, I don't actually care about the people in another country who are suffering. And they're like, that's horrible. I'm like, I think it's terrible that it's happening. But how can I sit here and say that I care about it if I'm not going to actively try and make it better for them? And I think we sort of delude ourselves into that. We give the illusion of caring so we can think that we're these altruistic people, and we may be, but when we lie to ourselves about that, it doesn't help anyone. It ruins all situations. So we can say I'm this altruistic person and I see all these issues that are going to come out, and I'm going to be very negative about it and very doomer about it. I'm going to talk about all that, but I'm not actually interacting with it in any positive way, and I'm not trying to make any positive changes. So you don't truly care. Or else, if you really at the core of your being saw this as such a fundamental issue, you would educate yourself as much as possible and you would be involved in it. I'm not saying people don't feel that it is a thing that is bad or this could have a negative impact, but it's this illusion of caring, is what I like to call it, that covers us in this blanket of inactivity where we can still tell ourselves, I told you, I knew this was going to happen if it does happen. And I'm out there every day typing comments about how I care, you know. Eh,
Yeah. To jump in here as well, the horrors of the past pay for the glory of the future. So no matter how bad it is in these cobalt mines, right? Those are no longer going to be necessary in like 10, 20, 30 years with advanced robotics. The very thing that they're doing is going to free them from that existence. So there is the other aspect to this, like people talking about, I believe the factory Foxconn, where all these like people are jumping up the sides of the building. They got nets, right? Building these iPhones. Not only is that like a really big building with, I think, millions of people working in it, something crazy, right? So like you got a high stress environment. It's pretty good pay for that part of China. Um, but you got a bunch of people in a factory. People are going to get depressed. It sucks. It's not the best work conditions. You and I wouldn't want to work there, right? But that, as time goes on with automation, isn't a part of the equation anymore. Eventually, it is no longer a part of the equation. that there is some moral bad where there's a child in a mine somewhere. That is going to go away. And it's the very technology that it enabled in the first place that is going to free them from that. It sucks short term, but it's like I said at the beginning of this little rant, the horrors of the past pay for the glories of the future. That is what we're dealing with here. So even in the case where you don't do anything, eventually robots are just cheaper. So there's moral issues to it, obviously, but in general, humanity is going to be freed from a lot of these sins, despite committing them. It's a weird scenario where to get a better place where we don't have that, we kind of have to have done it. You know, does that make sense, Johnny?
Yeah, I think the whole point of all that was not that you shouldn't care about things, but that if everyone thinks everyone else cares, no one does anything. So when we sort
Bystander
of
effect.
give this, yes, exactly. And so like when we all have our bumper stickers and we all at the dinner table at our fancy restaurant talk about how engaged we are with the issues of the world, in effect, it tells me, well, I don't need to really care about this. Look at how much these people care. Look how educated they are. They're clearly actually doing something about it. When in reality, we're all purely performative. And so I think if we were just a little more honest with ourselves, that, you know what, that's really bad, but I don't actually care. I don't think about that at all on a daily basis. I don't. It doesn't affect me in any way. If someone mentions it, I say, that's really too bad. I wish that wasn't going on. Then I think we'd be able to get a lot more done because people would have a more realistic idea of what's being done to stop that stuff or to evolve us past those things.
Yeah, part of the issues are as well like you you're not really responsible for what corporations are doing in general, even if you buy their products. There's degrees of like you it's the bystander effect where I guess with the case of Bud Light recently being boycotted to hell, obviously boycotts can happen, but we're not necessarily in a state where people can connect to that degree and all agree to boycott Apple. It's not really going to happen. Everyone needs their cell phone. Apple happens to be providing half the market. People aren't going to give up their cell phone. There's just not, and people aren't even going to give up to go to a new cell phone because it's too inconvenient to
Yep.
switch to a new platform.
But I'm already
So
adjusted to it.
yeah, it's like
But then doesn't that in and of itself necessitate the idea that you didn't really care that much?
yeah, that's kind of the point here. But the other aspects to it is you're not really responsible for what they're doing. And unless you have the power to stop it, you're not really responsible. So it's kind of like I said, like we're going to be freed from the hell that we live in
Hmm.
now, in all likelihood, either by either by actual hell or, um, just post scarcity. We don't really have to deal with these moral implications of this because it's mostly on government, to be honest, because they're not regulating that part of this. So it's not down to you. It's down to general attitudes and policies of the government, making it harder to do business in first world countries, for example, uh, necessitates third world labor. So a lot of these issues morally that we're dealing with as a society don't really have a whole lot to do with you and what you do on a daily basis. No matter how much stuff you're buying, there's a significant amount more capital being provided to these companies that are doing these bad things by investors. So you don't even like it's like Uber is horribly treating their drivers, right? Well, Uber doesn't, or DoorDash especially would be a better example, right? But DoorDash doesn't produce like an income. It's mainly funded by investors. So the main people that have funded that thing where the drivers are being very mistreated and they're not having a good time and uh, as far as like monetarily speaking, they're getting ripped, right? I believe at first they were taking tips directly, and not giving them any of it to the driver. So that's an investor funded thing. Just because you bought something off of DoorDash doesn't mean that you contributed to that driver's shitty state in life. It's not your fault. Like, I think a lot of people need to kind of be freed from this a little bit, because if you like sit around feeling guilty about this all day, it's there's nothing, unless you get out and do things about it. There's no real reason to have any horrors on yourself, is my point, generally speaking.
Yeah.
It's like a waste of mental energy. Your ideas should be like, okay, we have all this cobalt mining issue going on, right? Okay, what's something that I could do to solve that? Let's figure out a new battery architecture that doesn't involve any cobalt. Guess who already did that? It's Elon Musk and his team with the iron cathode batteries, which require a tiny amount of cobalt compared to cell phone batteries, which are almost all cobalt, I believe, or well, as much as like needs, right? So it's like a massive percentage of the battery is cobalt.
Right.
So the solution is to just do something else where that no longer becomes feasible. So if you can switch on that basis, which, by the way, AI is going to help everyone do, when it comes to even manufacturing stuff, we're going to have a lot less moral implications for anything we do, to be honest. Honestly, it might become a moral implication that we're not paying for the third world labor. We'll run down that path where they don't have any income anymore. Now we're all sad about that. Like, we're always going to kick the can down the road till we hit post scarcity and everything's managed by robots. We could all talk to each other on the internet.
So on the concept of AI driven government, I think that it's in our lifetime that's very like feasible. Well, like when I say our
We're
lifetime,
going to
obviously
have
there's
AI augmented government for damn
yeah,
sure.
yeah, absolutely. And in our lifetime, if we're talking from a non-extended lifetime, I think towards the end of if we, for some miraculous reason, we don't have longevity increases. If we're just talking like, yeah, let's say you're in your 20s to 30s, so let's say 50 to 60 years from now, there will be AI augmented government. 100, 200 years from now, I can't see any scenario where governmental entities are not either augmented or almost fully sort of uh, driven, controlled, not necessarily fully controlled, but when people start augmenting themselves, where do we draw the line between, well, is that sort of AI augmented at that point, or is that like human augmentation augmenting get the governmental process? So that's I think that's a net positive. I think it's not that AI will be able to fully understand in the next like 10 years, fully understand the ethical dilemmas that we face and the best outcomes for them. But when it comes to things like keeping organizations in check and monitoring and sort of, making sure that these people aren't doing these very drastically negative things to the population, I see AI augmented government as a very positive thing. Because worst case scenario, is that the government uses it to lie to us, manipulate us, and keep us in shackles, right? That's like, I think we can agree that's the worst case scenario. But that's already, according to everyone, what the government does. So we haven't lost anything on that. So
A,
there's only positive benefits.
a benefit to AI government, by the way, is what we're already seeing, the ground level capabilities of text generation, as well as now video generation. But text generation specifically is complete the next word in the sentence with nothing you've ever heard before, with all the training data that you have, right? That's what we're doing with ChatGPT. It's being pre-prompted. You're just continuing the user versus the system conversation. That's all it's doing. It's just got a pre-prompt that says that, with some varying degrees of weights are being adjusted in the background based on feedback. So what that means is that as time goes on, these systems are going to be extremely good at predicting things. which means when we're talking about government AI, it's going to be very good at predicting outcomes on policy. So as long as it's not evil, it's going to create prosperity. That's the net outcome, is that it's going to be so good at predicting us and how we'll respond to something that it's just going to make the net most best positive outcomes for us in general. So that's something to think about. If it can continue a story and make a satisfying ending, it'll do that for us too.
Yeah.
As far as text generation already making a difference, by the way, that's definitely true. I think the children growing up are going to be dealing with a much higher level of English than any of us dealt with growing up on average, unless you spent all of your life in a college, I guess. But yeah, I guess these days not so much. But but the point is, you've got an entire population that's going to be legitimately dealing with just higher levels of sophistication with anything they read constantly. So we're already on our way to being smarter in many ways.
I also think it's important because we have a lot of bureaucratic sort of Brazil-esque, and I'm referencing the movie, sort of issues going on. And the only way, we need so many different people. Like that's the a lot of people are like, oh man, we have these senators or these like federal representatives, and they can't know everything, right? That's why they have so many legislative assistants in LA's, and that's why there's so many different senators, and there's so many different Congress peoples, because they all have to have some level of knowledge, and it's gotten so massive that there are so many. Like that's why we need lobbyists, because you can't expect the person that you elected, because they understand econ and governance, to understand the medical ramifications of smoking marijuana, or what are all the possibilities of epigenetics and CRISPR. Like you just can't expect your representatives to have all that knowledge. So we have to have a system of lobbying, right? So that these lobbyists who are very educated on this can go and make their plight for their specific course of action, and say, actually, you guys, I think here, let me lay this out for you. And hopefully the people you elected are cognitively intelligent enough to know a good argument from a bad one. That's kind of like the whole point. But it gets so complex and so convoluted, and there's so many moving parts within governance, that AI is really like, at least from even if we just use it as sort of the gathering and dissemination of information into digestible bites for those people in charge, it would still be extremely impactful, I think.
Yeah, there's also the aspect of like every code base is going to have to probably 100,000x in size. So it's going to be the same with degrees of management on every level in government, because things are just going to be significantly more complicated, especially in the short term with like image generation. There's going to have to be a bunch of like checks and balances on short term of like, is this video of Putin saying he's going to nuke everyone real or not? Because there's people making them, right? You're going to see tons of weird disinfo, and you're going to need a way to like disseminate whether or not it's real live as much as possible. And AI is going to help us with this as well, because that's a temporary it's a temporary security concern that we all have, which is especially we're going to see this during the election. There's going to be a ton of AI stuff of Biden saying shit he never said and Trump saying shit he never said, and they're going to spew it back and forth, and it's going to be a bit of a nightmare. You're only going to be able to trust the live stuff that you see, temporarily speaking. And even then, someone could just live broadcast some bullshit. So that's why you're also going to want Twitter's going to play a very big role here, because of verified accounts streaming debates and stuff like that. You're going to get a lot more suspicion in the near future. So we need AI to like help us solve problems that computers were already causing for us pre-AI, which is like bot armies and all sorts of stuff like this. It's much easier for these machines that are intelligent with large throughput to moderate issues, or at least bring things to attention to people that need to know about it and be careful about certain things. I think that's also why Twitter is developing its own AI, is because of this content moderation that's going to be coming, because it's probably going to end up being the biggest platform there ever was.
Yeah.
As far as like next 10 years down the line, Twitter's going to be very big. I can see them honestly turning themselves into Discord in some ways. You're already seeing that with the Twitter Spaces like stages. So I think he really does want to make it the everything app. Maybe that's where the Oasis comes in. We can go on the Twitter Oasis.
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about utopias.
You're already in one, son.
Oh no,
This is as good as it gets.
it's so
It's
over.
never gonna get any. It's never gonna get any better than this. It's so over.
It's never been more over.
That's funny.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the community notes are actually really important there too. It's been fun to see various people get community noted on stuff, but there is a Smokeaway pointed this out, where he said community notes are kind of dangerous to like comedy on Twitter, because like you'll immediately see a note under it of this is actually just a parody account, and like so the joke doesn't hit as hard. So there's degrees of like that stuff happening as well.
Well, you can't have jokes because people might get confused about those jokes and they might think it's real.
Yeah, that's a problem, isn't it? Where not everyone's working with all the cylinders, so like they you can fool them very easily for a joke, and it becomes a big problem as well. This has been like a big danger with social media for a long time now. The most common of this is faking people's deaths for fun.
Oh, that's a
Tom
classic.
Hanks died. He's dead. Or obviously the Sam Hyde memes with the mass shooter, Sam Hyde. Every time that pops up, that's hilarious.
It is funny.
Yeah, it is. I can't believe he keeps getting away with it all the time. That's crazy.
How dare he?
Yeah. Anyways, for the record, I am going to be headed out here in just a bit. Did you guys want to
Yeah.
end it right here?
Yeah, I've got stuff I've got to attend and
Yeah, that's fine
today
with
as
me.
well. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will be editing this and putting a bit more effort into it, but the episode will be up probably in the next few days, and then we'll schedule the next event. Thanks for coming, everyone. By the way, thanks for staying the whole time there, Symbiosis.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep. Have a good one, everyone.
everyone have a nice day.
Goodbye.